Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start. Will you all please take your seats? Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
John Donovan. Here. Michael Hurley. Here. Jay Lick. Here. Gaylord Meyer. Eric Sunman. Here. Pete Ambrose. Here. Catherine Burstein. Here. John Jones. Here. Jeff Steele. Here. Keith Marion. Here. Ed Bateson. Here. Sam Cargill. Here. Hank Ferentz. Here. Dave McKenzie. Here. Mary McCullough. Here. Heather Dean. Present. Joe DiMartino. Bill Gerber. Here. Joe Palmer. Here. Cindy Waldron. Here. Josh Garskoff. Here. Lauren O'Brien. Here. Andrew Semmel. Ruth Smay. Here. Carol Way. Here. Julie Gottlieb. Here. Alan Marks. Here. Joe Siebert. Here. Jay Walk. Here. Les Ezma. Here. Jennifer Hochberg. Here. Kevin Hopkins. Here. Eric Newman. Here. Phil Pierce. Here. Hal Schwartz. Here. Kathy Braun. Here. Alex Durrell. Here. Jason Lee. Here. Tom McCarthy. Here. Jeff Milrano. Here. Pamela Iacono. Here. Ellen Jacob. Here. Lori McCardle. Here. Carol Pontrelli. Here. Chris Timniak. Here. Brian Caffarelli. Here. Brian Farnan. Here. Ray Newberger. Bill Perugini. Here. Bruce Ryan.
Here. Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I ask you all to please remain standing, and I'd like you all to take a moment of silence in recognition of the Title family, which underwent successful surgeries this weekend. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. The first item on the agenda tonight is to consider and act upon the self-supporting funds in the amount of $5,409,191 for the Water Pollution Control Authority for the fiscal year July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2016. Moved by Representative Bateson, second by Representative Schwartz. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, the item passes unanimously. Next item, to consider and act upon the proposed appropriations in the amount of $291,247,718 for the fiscal year July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2016, as recommended by the Board of Finance for any lawful purpose. The total proposed budget as approved by the Board of Finance is as follows. Board of Finance recommended budget, $291,247,718, less non-current tax year revenue of $26056,007. Net revenue to be raised by current year taxation, $265,191,111, plus senior tax relief in the amount of $4,183,144, plus reserve for uncollected taxes and other credits, $4,509,012, gross amount to be raised by taxation, $273,883,267. Moved by Representative Dean, seconded by Representative Hurley. Is there any discussion on this item? Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. As within years past, I'd like to make a motion to suspend Rule 26 in order to hold unlimited political caucuses.
Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Schwartz. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Item passes unanimously. there any other discussion on the budget? Representative Timniak.
Good evening, Representative Timniak, District 9. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank all the members of the body who worked so diligently this year on working hard to examine every aspect of the budget. So with that, I'd like to begin. Fairfield's a great town. Throughout this budget process, I've always reflected on how fortunate we are to live in such a great community and how privileged I am to serve on this body. Part of that awesome responsibility is to analyze the town budget and to make sure it meets the needs of our community. I'd like to thank all the town officials for making that possible. I'd like to reinforce the fact that Fairfield has great schools. This budget provides strong schools for our town. It does not cut any programs nor any positions. I know that I speak for the entire body when I say we're proud of the town's education system and all it offers. My son Sam attends Riverfield. My wife and I are very pleased with the education he is receiving. I'm amazed to watch Sam grow and to learn. Just last night he read 3 books to me, and I think that's pretty good for a kindergartner. I'm comforted in knowing that he'll benefit from the education system I benefited from, and he'll also enjoy the opportunities I enjoyed. I support the budget Dr. Title presented to town bodies this year. We wish him all the best for a speedy recovery for him and his son. The Republican majority will not be supporting or proposing any cuts to the education budget this year. We have great public safety services. Chief McNamara and Chief Fellner, I want to thank you for everything you do. I know that you work very hard to make sure that your respective agencies spend every tax dollar efficiently while keeping our town safe. I appreciate your efforts and I support your budgets as well. I am, however, concerned that yet another year has passed without both the fire department and the police department contracts being settled. It's been almost 2 years, and I believe that's problematic, not only to the departments, but also to the taxpayers. The lack of contracts creates uncertainty when it comes to budgeting. We owe it to both departments and the taxpayers to negotiate fair contracts. We have a great quality of life in Fairfield, and we think this budget also supports that. Spring is finally here, and it's nice to see so many friends outside enjoying our beautiful town. Heading to the parks and beaches, attending Little League games, or soccer games, or simply outside dining. I believe our town has the largest rec department in Fairfield County, and I want to thank Director Lombardo for all he does to keep the rec department budget in check. I'm sure, like all government departments, he hears more complaints when people call on the phone than he does get compliments. I can report that when I take my son to soccer or Little League, I see happy smiles on all the kids' faces, and I enjoy the programs. I know the kids do as well, so keep up the good work there. I want to let you know that we support the rec department as well. I am, however, frustrated that we'll spend another summer without Penfield Pavilion being open. To make matters worse, we recently saw that the FEMA reimbursement rate wasn't what we projected when we passed the project. That number is still up for debate, and we're not sure where that's going to settle. But what it does is it continues the trend of, are we going to have another project come in over budget or are we not? We really want to keep our eye on that project because we want that done as quickly as possible. That adds revenue back to the rec department and will alleviate some of the burden we have. This past winter was harsh, and it took a great toll on our roads. I'm happy to support this year's paving budget. I know Director Michelangelo will be thrilled about that. But I'm upset that RTM never had an opportunity to vote on the bonding. We were hoping a $1 million paving bonding project was going to be delivered to us. This would have been a great opportunity for us to catch up on the paving of the roads. In years past, we've always taken money out of paving because it's an easy cut. This year, with the cost of asphalt a little bit less than it is in years past, it would have been a great opportunity to add more paving to that, and especially through the means of bonding. What we have in front of us here is is a budget. It's not a great budget. We don't have a great budget. A real budget is one that supports our shared future by helping Fairfield achieve an even stronger economic health. A responsible budget is one that recognizes the ever-increasing burdens we have continued to place on our taxpayers. Unfortunately, this budget does not allow us to invest in our priorities. In many respects, it reminds me of the election year budget we saw last year proposed by Governor Malloy. Now the state's facing a $2 billion tax deficit. I'm sorry, the state's now facing a $2 billion tax deficit. They're looking to raise taxes there. All told, Fairfield's budget next year is shaping up to look a lot like it. Connecticut's budget this year has major holes in it, and they're going to have to tax us to fix that. The election year budget offers the illusion of lower spending. However, that illusion is built on one-time savings that are being deferred to years following. Those one-time savings will be back next year. Increases.
Madam Moderator, the speaker is stating opinion against fact and questioning the motives of another member of the body by talking about election year budgets. That's not what we're here to vote on tonight. We need to be talking about specific items in the budget.
Representative Timiak, if you want to finish with just points on the budget, thank you.
Okay. I've struggled over the past years to work with the proposed budgets. The difficulties we have as the RTM is that we can't propose solutions, we can only propose reductions. And this budget doesn't offer us many opportunities to propose reductions. This budget offers us an opportunity to essentially pass it and move on and kick the hard decisions to the road, to the budgets in the future. So with that, I'd like to...
First Selectman Tetro?
Thank you. There are a couple of points of error in what Representative Timiak just said, and I don't want anybody in this room to misunderstand that. Point one, the FEMA reimbursement rate has not changed since Penfield was passed. Let me say that again. The FEMA reimbursement rate has not changed, and Representative Timiak does not have any facts, documentation, or support for that statement. All right? It doesn't have anything to do with this year's budget either at the moment. Two, the current rules that our town passed and our Board of Finance passed concerning bonding ask that we do not bond paving going forward. It was brought up under non-recurring and it was removed for that reason. All right, but it was brought up so we'd have a discussion to realize that we need to keep the paving that is in the budget, and cutting that would put us further behind than we've been in the past. All right, this year, this budget includes an increase in that paving to make sure that we can address and get back on track with where our roads need to be. And especially coming off the winter we just had, that gives us more money in there for repair, not only for doing new roads, but repair. In terms of one-time savings, this budget was a lot of work in the making. It's been something that's been built over several years. When you look at things like the pension number coming down, it's come down 2 years. It's down, or $2 million this year. It's down at $7 million and change, and it will stay at roughly that number for the next 5 years. That's been because of a lot of work by our pension board, going out and investing in the right categories, making sure we bring on the right pension managers, and getting that taken care of. They are meeting every month now, unlike before I took office when they were meeting once a quarter. Second, our workers' comp was one of the fastest growing expenses we had. We put together safety committees. We put together additional training funded in budgets by this body. And we're seeing the benefit of that as our workers' comp numbers come down. We're seeing reductions in OPEB because of our Chief Fiscal Officer, Bob Mayer, who went out and negotiated a program for pharmaceuticals that saves us $750,000 a year. Every year going forward. So there are a number of items like that in the budget. I'd be happy to step through those in more detail. I did in some earlier meetings. I'm sorry Representative Timniak wasn't listening at that time, but I'll be happy to set up a personal appointment and step him through that in more detail.
Okay, everybody, I'm really far from a microphone, so let's try not to go tit for tat. Does anybody else wish to speak to the budget? Representative Palmer?
Joe Palmer, District 4, and thank you everyone for coming tonight, and to all members of the town bodies, to department heads, and everyone who contributed to putting this budget together. Thank God we're here, right? And good job, everyone. The tax rate increase represented by this budget before us tonight is a welcome reprieve for all of us. Hopefully we'll get it out of here by a decent time tonight versus last year. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. Though I don't have any reductions to propose tonight myself, I want to caution everyone that they cannot think that this budget means we have solved the tax problem in this town. In fact, it took remarkable timing with both pension and debt service payment reductions and savings in the school system, not to mention the savings Mr. Tetro mentioned about with our prescription health care, from basically coming to a 4% increase, or over a 4% increase this budget, or a repeat of the budget from 2 years ago. And if we all recall, 2 years ago's budget was very contentious. Every town body, including the Board of Ed, was relied upon or looked at or felt compelled to make reductions. And we avoided that this year by these savings, but it doesn't mean that our problems have gone away, and I just want to make that point. So without serious out-of-the-box changes in how the town operates, coupled with some recalibration, significant recalibration of the town's employee benefits structure, I think we can easily envision an increase in the next year of in the 3 to 4% range. There won't be these kinds of offsets next year. But most concerning to me is the future of the education budget, which represents 65% of the overall town budget. The skyrocketing healthcare costs forced the district to increase its healthcare budget by $3.7 million this year, or an additional $2,700 per employee. But while you see a significant overall increase in the Board of Ed budget, it appears that we've made this significant investment. The district's operating expenses, or non-personnel related expenses like technology, books, and other classroom supplies, upgrades, etc., increased by only $50,000. So I believe there's something wrong there. And I don't mean to denigrate the fine, hardworking teachers in our community, or even single them out necessarily. This does go for all of our town bargaining units. But the fact is the model no longer works. Healthcare costs have grown to be too expensive, and it's not sustainable or fair to ask taxpayers to continue to subsidize them at their current levels. Our advisors project for the teacher's budget a 9% increase each year in healthcare, and for their healthcare costs, an additional $1.7 million in 2018 because of the Affordable Care Act and the excise tax on so-called Cadillac plans, which our plans will be subject to. So taxpayers are going to be asked to absorb that, and I just think it's unacceptable. So if anything, the incremental approach to recalibrating our labor agreements is the thing that's placing limitations on the education system in particular, not the minor reductions made by this body in recent years. I also think it's easy to predict that enrollment will grow at a faster rate in the coming years, placing increased pressure on the education system. I'm amazed at how many times people approach me saying, "You live in Fairfield? Wow, I've heard so many great things about that community. I live in Westchester, I live in Manhattan, I live in Norwalk, I live in Stamford. I heard you have great schools. I heard our taxes are in line with you." So we are a very attractive community for a lot of people. And that's a wonderful thing. I think all of us should be proud of that. Fairfield is an ideal place to live. But there's another side of the reality. For those who lived in Fairfield for over a decade or longer and no longer have children in the school system, they have a different reality. Before 2008, the Great Recession, the growth in our property values and incomes was quite strong, and the increase in our property taxes were manageable for most residents. But after the downturn hit, it was no longer affordable for many families, and more residents began to leave or downsize. Increase the supply of Fairfield homes relative to demand, curbing property values. So while indeed it's wonderful to know that Fairfield is an attractive community with high-quality schools, we must all understand that it is essential that we maintain a healthy balance between residents with children in the school system and those who don't. So without any major uptick in our grand list, we can only really achieve that by keeping our property taxes low. And I personally believe that the trends impacting the education system are going to make it difficult in the near future. So taking all this into account, many might be asking, well, why aren't members of the RTM proposing any further reductions to the budget, or why aren't you doing anything? What else are you doing to help this impending situation? And just speaking for the members of the Republican caucus, I believe we've done a tremendous amount in the last 5 years. On this night, our only responsibility is to be able to reduce the budget, or that's our only real power. And we've seized that opportunity in the past 5 budgets, not this one, but in the previous ones, to trim $5 million off in operating expenses from the budget. Now, the operating expenses in the budget represent 20% of the budget. That's really the only piece of it we can look at. So it's a very hard thing to do, to analyze and do that research and find things that aren't going to have a major impact on the town.
Representative Palmer, you're getting
I'm
close
almost
to your
there.
10 minutes.
Yeah. So I sincerely believe the operating expenses in the town are very lean. We've done a lot to trim them back, and that if we are going to be making further cuts here, they're probably going to be limiting or reducing a service, or it's going to be deferring a payment on something that's going to be essentially kicking the can down the road. We've also voted down labor agreements. We ended up helping to move most of the union bargaining units over to 401k for new employees. That was a huge thing that we've done. We've also voted down agreements and realized how impossible it is, or how difficult it is for us to be able to have an impact to the content of an agreement as a member of the RTM. This power, in the power to enact the kind of solutions necessary to help this situation, resides primarily in the First Selectman's office. So I urge the administration and department heads to continue to act with a sense of urgency, to think out of the box, to continue to work smarter and more efficiently, to level with our bargaining units about the financial realities we face, and arrive at long-term solutions, to do whatever it takes to keep the costs down so we can sustain all the things we love about our wonderful community.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, District 4. Fairfield means value and quality of life. That's what comes to mind. I've heard a lot of things being said tonight regarding our budget, and I'm proud of the budget that we have forward. It's taken 2 months in the making with 2 bipartisan bodies, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, to come together and to work on give and take, and what's important, what's not as important, and how we can come together in a very goal-oriented manner to keep our budget under 2% at 1.64. And even without all those changes of back and forth and the careful planning, it's still at the original amount of 1.64. And one of the things that I'd like to share with the emails that I get from my constituents, also in District 4, is how many are retired and are appreciative of all the services that they continue to use, including the library and the beaches and the golf course and the tennis courts and everything else in between. And while they don't have children in school any longer, they have an understanding that good schools means good property values. Again, value and quality of life. So in this 2-month period of review, intense review of two bodies, they've come together and they have decided a 1.64 increase, again, for value and quality of life. And we've restored key services, the DPW with trucks and equipment. The Board of Ed has restored world languages. We've restored materials in the library. Again, this is the lowest tax increase in 15 years. We have to come together and realize that this is something that is worked on, that's been focused upon, and that we're moving forward. This is a solid budget. It's practical, it's realistic, it's reliable. It's something that the voters, the taxpayers, the families in Fairfield have been looking for, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Representative Bateson and Representative Schwartz, then Representative Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. Through you to Budget Director Linda Gardner. I'd like an update on where we are now. I just heard Representative Dean say 1.64% and the tax rate delta. Is that where we are now after all the adjustments?
Mr. Mayor? We wanted, Representative Bateson has a question on where we are right now with the percentage.
I'm sorry about that. I was trying to help somebody out there with some numbers. The question is, what is the current mill rate change?
Yes.
That's not an exact number until such time as the Board of Finance sets the mill rate, because at that same time they'll be setting the, the collection rate. But as of right now, that number is about 1.64%.
Does that take into consideration the amount you were talking about, the Board of Assessment Appeals adjustment?
Correct.
Which I'm envisioning it's going to bring it lower?
That takes into account everything that we know to date, with the exception of where the Board of Finance is going to set the collection rate.
So we're at 164?
Correct.
Thank you.
Representative Schwartz and then Representative Donovan.
Hal Schwartz, District 7. I think I got to tend to agree with Representative Palmer. Looking forward is a good thing, but I think we have to look back before we look forward. The budget that we're looking at tonight, a 1.64% tax increase, is something that's been in the making for the last 6 years. The administration, the Board of Finance, they've put all these procedures in place, all these plans in place. This is a work-in-progress budget. This is a budget moving forward. I know that the Republican caucus would like to take all the credit for the lower tax increases, but I think all the planning that went on ahead of it and all the savings that have been accumulated over the last 6 years are the reason that we're standing here today with a budget of 1.64%. This body has the right and the obligation to reduce the budget if they think there's a reason to do it. I have stood here for the last 6 years reminding this body that it is not the Board of Finance, that it is not the Board of Education. We don't negotiate contracts. We don't tell the administrators what to do. We are here as the body to make sure that what is done in the correct way. Legislating is what we do. I think we do a good job of that. And I think that our department heads, our administration, the Board of Finance and the Board of Education have done a magnificent job over the last 6 years to get us where we are now. And I think moving forward, I think it's only going to get better. There has been some rhetoric about that this is a one-time here and a one-time there. People are talking off the cuff, but history has a tendency to repeat itself, and if it does, I think we're in really good shape. Oh, and by the way, I am one of those people who have no children in the education system, and I'm really glad that I'm still here in Fairfield. Thank you.
Point of information, are we going to go through this department out of order?
Yes. Would you like to come up? I'm going to start with the town side, then we'll go to Board of Education. If there's something you want to put on the table, feel free to step up and go right ahead and do that. Anybody else? Okay. Seeing no one else, I actually have something that I'd like to speak to this evening, and that goes to a conversation that you were all present for during the budget hearings, and it's related to the Finance Department, the additional head count that they were looking for. I raised some points during that conversation about whether or not, based on the job description that was presented to us and concerns about adding to head count and medical insurance liabilities, if there wasn't another way to look at this position, perhaps part-time or perhaps having some temporary help come in. A lot of the positions looked like they were project-oriented and once completed could be handed off to already existing staff. I think there was a demonstrable need that there's a lot of work in that department that needs to get done and there's not enough hands to do it. But I wondered if there was another way to do this without adding to some of our liabilities. I'm very pleased to tell you all that Chief Fiscal Officer Robert Mayer took my commentary to heart, along with comments that Representative Bateson made. And he came back to me and said that he was very much willing to work along those lines. And if it was at all possible and the RTM would consider giving him the salary line for that position and reduce the benefits end of that position, they would move forward with working on getting the job done in that department, reassess, and come back to us next year with an evaluation of what they need, perhaps a lower job level, perhaps nothing at all, perhaps a part-time position, but that they would take the year to reassess. And with that, I'm going to offer up a motion. I'll put it on the table, ask for somebody to move it and second it. But in terms of discussion, Mr. Mayor, did I categorize that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay. So the motion I'm going to put on the floor and ask somebody to move and second is a motion to reduce Department 3010 Finance Senior Accountant Analyst from full-time to professional help, no benefits. Object code 52120, life insurance in the amount of $107. Object code 52200, Social Security in the amount of $4,744. Department 1330 HR, object code 52100, health insurance in the amount of $20,654. Department 1310 retiree benefits, object code 52312 401A in the amount of $2,480 for a total reduction of $27,985. Moved by Representative Mayer, seconded by Representative Hurley. Is there any discussion on this item? Excellent. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you all, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to the budget? Representative Donovan.
John Donovan, District 1. You went right up to finance, so I'll stay right around there. Department number 3110. Thank you, Mr. Tetro, for meeting with Phil and myself earlier this week. Thought it would be helpful to provide an update to the rest of the RTM so that we're all on the same page. Wanted to get more background just so that we all understand on the Microsoft license issue. What's the total cost per year? How has it been covered? Just to get some background on that. Or Bob.
All right, I don't have the exact numbers with me tonight. The background is fairly straightforward, however. The town, for a period of years, failed to adequately pay for the software like Office Max, the Microsoft, what is the one that starts with an A? There's various Adobe Acrobat. Didn't pay for when it copied and opened up new machines, started up new machines, when it upgraded machines. When I say machines, I mean PCs. Town did not pay. So the town built up a liability over a period of time that the town owed because we had copied, we were using the licenses. It put the town at risk because using something that you haven't paid for, someone can come in and tell you to stop using it. So we opened up a dialogue with the reseller, CDW, and with Microsoft, and initially the initial prices that were out there were for the total to bring us current was a little over 1.6 million. We ended up settling coming current, and two, giving the rights for full upgrades for 3 years for 1.357 or something like that, I think. I don't remember exactly, which is paid for over a 3-year period. We've paid for we've paid one installment already, and the next installment is due in a year.
So,
and the number in the budget might have been based upon an earlier number. Linda, I don't remember. Pardon? Yeah, and the original budget had the higher number in it, and the Board of Finance made an adjustment down to what the contracted number is.
and what is that number now? It was 650, it's 574?
$461. Yeah, basically there was, the original budget was 564, but that included other licensing agreements that needed to be paid for ongoing activity. So the number that's in the budget is 504, but I can't tell you right now without that documentation, because I didn't bring it, exactly what the total breakdown is.
Roughly the numbers.
But the budget is what we need to properly license all the software that we're currently using in the town.
And thank you for the details, too. We did check, and you did get quite a good deal. So thank you for catching that up. You're absolutely correct.
John and Tom, they're always checking my work.
So there's a lot of frustration with this department. And, you know, the understanding is warning signs have been there for years. The money for this is tied to a contract, so there isn't anything that we can cut from that right now. But going forward, how can we be sure that this is handled? I know that you were talking about integrating into the strategic plan, but as we looking at software, looking at the IT investments, how is that going to be managed longer term so that we don't find ourselves in this situation and we are evaluating things like cloud and other types of solutions?
Yeah, I guess I have two comments on that one. I can guarantee you that the proper amount will be in the budget going forward. And two, the whole issue obviously was a failure of some sort, administrative, et cetera, and that is something the administration is reviewing and looking at.
All right, thank you.
Representative Gerber.
Madam Moderator, Bill Gerber, District 4. I'm not great with Robert's rules, but I just noticed I think a lot of the people in the audience are teachers. I wonder if it's possible to get a sense of the body, like who's going to want to get up and speak and propose cuts, because it seems like it might be nice to do the Board of Ed first, because it appears that most of the people out there are here for that reason.
Thank you, but we've already made an announcement that there weren't going to be any cuts proposed to the Board of Education budget. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the IT item that was on the floor? Seeing no one, is there anybody else who would like to address anything on the town side of the budget? Yeah, I'm wrapping up the town side of the budget. It's now or never, folks. You want Representative Bateson?
What about education?
I'm going to go to education next. Okay. All right, is there anybody who would like to speak to the education side of the budget? Representative Donovan.
John Donovan, still District 1. Just wanted to give an update. There was a lot of discussion at the last budget meeting around the teacher's contract, and so a lot of it got addressed. Thank you very much to Phil Dwyer, to the Board of Education, to Bill Gerber, who taught me a bunch in terms of understanding the budget related to education. What I wanted to do is just kind of go in from a top-line perspective on where we kind of came out, which, you know, when we looked at that original contract, we had an understanding, and I know maybe the understanding wasn't the same for all people, but we kind of felt we heard it was 1.7% impact to the budget. And what I understand it to be is that the contract was a 1.7% impact. And the actual impact it makes to the budget is very different. They're two different things. If you go through and you look, the impact of the budget, particularly because of benefits, is significantly worse. So when you look at the benefits area, we talked about it being up 9%. Net claims is up over 7%. The claims pool, because this is combined with FEA contract and all other employees, is up a little over 8%. So as we started to look from a contract perspective, it was a perceived 5% decline in benefits. The reality from a budget perspective is it's over 7%. When you actually look at other benefits outside of healthcare, stuff like IBNR, fund balance, BOE security, retirees, that's up something like 24%. So I think it's something that the RTM really needs to consider going forward. I know it's something that David McKenzie is going to be looking at in terms of, hey, when we look at these contracts, we really need to understand contract versus budget. And I get that it's really complicated because of the way that estimates are made for different things, but I really don't think we're in a position to approve these contracts without understanding what it's actually going to do to the budget. So that was just a point that I wanted to make. It was really helpful to me to understand all the information. It took me a while, but I got there. Second is, as we start going forward and looking at education, I'm really happy that we're seeing over 200 data attributes that education is going to start reporting. I think that's going to be really helpful, that it's becoming a part of a plan so that the town can decide what they want to achieve in terms of education. I think it'll be really helpful. I want to raise another point related to that, though, which is the more and more data we get, and that's over 200 data attributes, PDFs just don't work. It's got to be in Excel. It's got to be in a format that we can use and understand and analyze. And I will, every single budget meeting, every single BOE meeting, raise that again and again, because, come on, I mean, you've got to give the data to us in a way that we can understand and analyze for us to make an impact. That was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the budget? Representative Braun. We're on education.
Catherine Braun, District 8. I echo Representative Donovan's comments about the Excel budget. With a $160 million budget, there certainly should be no cost constraints on providing data in a format that it can be usable. I mean, we have 50 members, we will have 40 members next time around. No one has any staff, it's a volunteer position. We do this in our spare time. We need to be able to analyze and evaluate the numbers. I've been using spreadsheets since the 80s, and I enjoy using spreadsheets, and you can't do it with PDF. So I would implore the Board of Ed to get it to us in a usable form. I just want to note that we were promised, 5 months ago, that the Board of Ed budget would be less than a 2% or a maximum of a 2% increase. It looks more like a 3.5% or almost 3.5%. And then I know some other departments have had a decrease. So I'm looking at conservation in particular, and I'm disappointed by that because they're short-staffed, and they have been since about 2008. And if anybody doesn't know, conservation generates significant revenue to our town. It also helps process applications, which generates tax revenue. And when they're short-staffed, they can't do that effectively or efficiently or to benefit our town. The Conservation Department helps keep Fairfield fair and our fields clean. And we have open space, we have shellfish beds that are managed and properly protected. We have conservation programs, and we have wetlands regulatory requirements, which the department staff has to support to meet deadlines. So for all those reasons, I'm disappointed that the Conservation Department budget was cut and not increased, and that we were not given the cut that we were promised, or given the limited increase we were promised in the Board of Ed. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the body at this time? Representative Gerber.
Thank you very much. Bill Gerber, District 4. I just want to take a little bit, I appreciate everything Kathy Braun does for the, Representative Braun does for the town, but I don't think we were promised anything. I think we were explained very specifically, at least from what I heard, twice in caucus, or once in our committee meetings, and twice in our RTM meeting, that the exact calculation of how that was done, and I understood it perfectly. I also understand, and that was 1.7%, and how that number was arrived at. But I also understand that it's very, very difficult to predict healthcare claims trends. And having followed this, because my wife's on the Board of Ed, having followed this pretty closely, I remember going through a few years where the claims were very good, and we built up a reserve, and the reserve got too big, and there were some issues with employees of the town, of the Board of Ed, that we shouldn't be having these reserves because they were paying into it. It was unfair, so we brought those reserves down over time, and now we're having bad claims. those claims got worse. Sometimes they get worse, sometimes they get better. They've gotten worse over the last couple of years. You can't really predict that. I think the president of the Teachers Association was CEO of a major healthcare company, got up and he spoke to that. We've had good times and we've had bad times. You can't predict that. What I worry about is and I agree with Representative Palmer. This medical inflation is a problem. It's a problem everywhere. But what I do worry about is this sort of what I view as a naive notion that all you have to do is squeeze the teachers and everything will be okay. Our teachers, when we were going through the contract negotiation, explanations at the RTM, I think it was made pretty clear to us that our teachers are contributing at the high end, if not at the very high end, of what teachers are doing in Connecticut. And I've looked at contracts, teachers' salary contracts and grade levels for many, many towns in Connecticut, and our teachers are not out of whack with those. So if you want to raise contributions significantly more than where they are, number one, I'm not sure you can get away with it if you go to arbitration. And number two, I think some of the very same people that talk about continually pushing this onto the teachers also on the other side of their mouths say, we need to have excellence. But we need to do more with less, but we need to have better schools. I find a real contradiction with that. I think in order to attract the best teachers and retain them, you have to have competitive pay. You also have to have competitive benefits. I know there's some people who teach, and maybe they've got a spouse who hits it big, and they don't need the money anymore, but they might, continue to teach. But there are many teachers in this district that really need the money. They need the benefits. They can't live here, and they can't teach. They can't continue to teach unless they get decent benefits. And if you look around at the towns in this area, many of the towns have had a major decrease in their student population. It is not an accident that ours has increased. It's not an accident that people move into this town. They're coming in for the education system, and I think we need to understand there's a linkage between our home values. I know some people in certain areas don't see that. The linkage may not be as strong, but I think in most areas of this town, we understand that there's a very strong linkage between our home values and our education system. And I know many people in this RTM really do understand that. But the notion that there's some magic bullet, that the next negotiation we're going to fix the health care, going to a HSA or something like that, it's not a magic bullet. It translates into putting it more on the teacher. Unless something happens at a macro level in this country, changing the teacher's health care is going to translate into a greater contribution by teachers, a greater cost of teachers. It's naive to think, we're going to do something they're going to make better choices going forward. It doesn't usually work that way. So what I think the dialogue needs to change going over the next few years. There has to be some understanding that, if you're going to push more onto the teachers and their real income, I think what Don Houston explained was a real income increase of teachers. It was a raise plus an additional give up that they're taking out of their salaries. What they would have normally taken home is going down from an increased contribution. The fact that medical spending has gone up, that's beyond, that's great. You might consider it value. But for them, they're getting the same benefit, and they're paying more for it. So let's be realistic. I applaud the teachers for negotiating, for being reasonable, and I think we need to be realistic going forward. Thank you.
Please, thank you very much, but please, no comments from the gallery. Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. Quick couple of thoughts. I agree with a lot of what Representative Timiak and Representative Palmer said. I'd like to go further than that, but I don't want to get yelled at. I think what we have before us, a 1.64 budget, I support it. I'm not one to give horses in the mouth. As it stands tonight, I'm going to approve this budget. I think going forward, we're not going to have the benefit of a lot of factors that are in this budget next year. Unfortunately, nowadays, over the past 10 years, our budget it serves at the mercy of several factors, those being Wall Street, outside analysts, outside professionals that help guide us through our pensions, and labor agreements. You know, we look at this budget this year, debt service next year is going to increase tenfold. That's a number we're going to have to take into consideration. Also, too, I mean, you know, given Wall Street and the pension, I mean, we're a couple bad quarters in performance away from bad numbers next year. These are always things that are in the back of my mind when it comes time to approve the budget. Again, you know, we do have some open contracts going forward. I do think that, you know, there needs to be more put into these contracts that protect the taxpayer. A lot of times, the contracts that are before us, I see a lot of protections built in for labor, and I understand that. You know, there wants to be some stability in your paycheck, and I get those things. But also, too, you know, with the way health insurance and retention, I mean, just last week we were waiting on March experience numbers to see if they were going to be positive or negative. It's literally how we live nowadays in this town, month to month, waiting on experience numbers. And that's a scary thing, and I think that, you know, while we negotiate contracts and even out expectations for labor, more needs to be put into that equation for the taxpayer because we are extremely affected by that. Given all these events, I'm content with the number that's before us tonight, 1.64%. I'm going to vote to approve it. But I urge caution that I don't think we're going to see this next year. I really don't, given all the events that are out there. Having said that, and all the discussion, Madam Moderator, I think the time is appropriate to call the question.
There's been a motion to call this, seconded by Representative and McCarthy. All in favor of calling the question? Oh, you're right.
I will withdraw then.
Thank you.
But there's no motions on the floor. Sorry? There's no motions on the floor.
There are no motions. All right, there's no motions on the floor. It's been rescinded. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the body at this time in this? I'm hoping that we can get to closing comments. Representative Marks? And just for the record, I'm only taking public comment on reductions. I did err in not going to the public on the finance position, but that was sort of a mutually agreed upon thing with the department. I hope you all will forgive me.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Alan Marks, District 6. I got very excited a few minutes ago. I was ready to second a motion by Representative Braun to increase the Conservation Department budget. I was disappointed she didn't make that. I just wanted to say that I am supporting this budget, 1.64%, relatively low number, and it allows us to put items back into the budget that have come out in the past, specifically world languages, which I was very disappointed. I know a lot of members of this body were disappointed to see come out. I think that gets us back into a position of being on par with some of the other districts in the area. And then just lastly, I want to say that I know everyone is concerned looking forward, but I just don't believe that negotiating teachers' contracts here on the floor of the RTM is the right place to do that.
Point of order, I wasn't negotiating a teacher's contract. Madam Moderator, I'd like to call the question.
Representative Donovan. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the body after Representative Donovan? The floor is yours.
John Donovan, still District 1. Just want to read a very quick paragraph, 30 seconds. This is by the 2010 report by the Connecticut Commission on Enhancing Agency Outcomes. This was put out by the governor. Private sector administrators earn 22 to 31% less than state administrators. This is driven, and by the way, this is my writing pulled from that, but the report is available online. This is driven in large part because 34% of the salary for state employees is pension versus 5% for private sector. Total average compensation of a state employee is 105 versus 74 for private sector. We have an issue. It's an issue that has to be faced. When the private sector sees net declines in salary, that's something that ends up happening. That's reality. You don't see that in the public sector. It's a challenge. It's just something the town has to face. So as we go in and all the comments are made, that's reality. That's a report the state did that came up with those conclusions. Thank you.
I just need 1 minute to get a final budget number. The motion on the floor is to approve the budget as amended in the amount of final number as amended is $273,855,282. Oh, sorry. Hey, how about that? We lowered this budget a lot. $291,219.72. Yes, you're right. See, now you're throwing me off. Ready? 291,219,733. Can we do this with a voice vote, or shall we do a roll call? Will the clerk please call the roll? We're voting on the budget as amended. If you're in favor of the budget, say yes. If you're not in favor of the budget, say no. Just so you know, if the budget fails, we have to come back here tomorrow and do this exercise again. But don't let that dissuade you.
Yes.
Pete Ambrose.
Yes.
Catherine Burstein. Yes. John Jones.
Yes.
Jeff Steele.
Yes.
Keith Marion.
Yes.
Ed Bateson.
Yes.
Sam Cargill.
Yes.
Hank Ferentz.
Yes.
Dave McKenzie.
Yes.
Mary McCullough. Heather Dean.
Yes.
Bill Gerber.
Yes.
Joe Palmer.
Yes.
Cindy Waldron. Josh Garskoff. Lauren O'Brien. Ruth Smay. Carol Way. Julie Gottlieb. Alan Marks. Joe Siebert. Jay Walk. Liz Ezema. Jen Hochberg. Kevin Hopkins. Eric Newman. Phil Pierce. Hal Schwartz. Kathy Braun. Alex Durrell. Jason Lee. Tom McCarthy. Jeff Millerano. Pamela Iacono.
Yes.
Ellen Jacob. Lori McCardle. Carol Pontrelli. Chris Timniak. Brian Caffarelli. Brian Farnan. Ray Newberger. Bill Perugini. Bruce Ryan.
The budget passes 43-5. The last item on the agenda is to consider and act upon any other matters presented to said meeting and which may be properly acted upon under the rules of the RTM. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Representative Schwartz, second by Representative Hurley. We stand adjourned. Thank you all for all of your hard work.